The natural world has a language of its own, a symphony woven from the sound of the wind, the rustling of leaves, and the calls of 1,000 different creatures. My job is to listen to and record that symphony. I am a hunter, but my prey is not flesh and blood. It is sound. I have traveled to the most remote places to capture the purest echoes of the earth. But in the Appalachian Mountains, I recorded something that does not belong to this world. My name is Ben, a nature sound recordist, or to put it more poetically, a sound hunter. My philosophy is simple. To truly understand a place, you must listen to it when it thinks no one is there. That conviction has led me to the farthest corners of the earth, and this time, it brought me to a nameless valley deep in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. The journey in was a journey into silence itself. The asphalt road turned to gravel, and finally just a faint trail swallowed by the trees. When I parked my truck and began to hike, the first thing that struck me was the sheer scale of the space. Ancient mountains covered in the deep green of old-growth forests stood silent like giant sleeping gods. The air was thick and pure, carrying the scent of fallen leaves, damp earth, and pine resin. I felt like a single speck of dust, swallowed by the immense wilderness. My temporary research station was just a large tent, pitched on a flat piece of land beside a creek. I was surrounded by a natural amphitheater. Any sound I made, the closing of my car door, the hammering of tent stakes, traveled a great distance, hit the opposing rock faces, and returned as a faint, distorted echo. The silence here wasn't empty. It had weight, a near-absolute stillness that pressed against your eardrums. My mission for the next 2 weeks was to record the nocturnal call of the whippoorwill, a bird with a haunting cry that repeats its own name, and which is often tied to the folklore of this region. I set up my system. Highly sensitive microphones placed throughout the valley, their cables running back to a small mixing board in my tent. At night, all I had to do was sit there, put on my professional-grade headphones, and listen to the symphony of the mountains. The first few nights were magnificent. Through the headphones, the world became magically alive. I heard the wind whistling through the high pines like a string orchestra, the sound of a distant black bear snapping a branch, the mournful cry of an owl echoing from the other side of the mountain, and the gentle babbling of the nearby creek. Every sound had its place, its own space in the soundscape. I recorded it all, feeling a complete sense of peace and satisfaction. This was my world, a world of natural laws and pure sound. On the third night, I recorded it, the distinctive whippoorwill call echoing clearly from the west, its sound reverberating naturally through the valley. I smiled. The trip was a success. I continued to listen, enjoying its repeating melody. But then, something strange happened. Just as the bird finished its call from a completely different direction to the east, another sound answered. A whistle. It mimicked the whippoorwill melody perfectly. Every note, every rhythm, not a single flaw. But something was wrong. As a sound expert, I noticed it immediately. The real bird's call had a natural reverb, a slight echo as it traveled through the open space. This whistle, however, was unnaturally dry and clean, as if it were being produced right next to the microphone with none of the environment's acoustic influence. I frowned, taking off my headphones. There was only the silence of the night. I put the headphones back on. I waited. The whippoorwill called again. And a few seconds later, that whistle answered, like a perfect but soulless sonic shadow. I began to feel uneasy. The next night, I was on watch. The whistling was back, but it was no longer mimicking the bird. I had built a small campfire to keep warm. I sat there, listening to the familiar crackle of burning wood. And then, through my headphones, I heard the whistle. This time it was mimicking the exact rhythm and pitch of the crackling fire, a repeating, abnormally pitched melody, a grotesque version of warmth. My whole body went cold. This was not a bird. Birds can't mimic the sound of a fire. Someone or something was out there, and it was close enough to hear my campfire. I quickly extinguished the flames, leaving only a weak flashlight. That night I slept with a large machete right next to me. The fear grew. The whistling became bolder. It started mimicking my personal sounds. One night I heard it reproduce the zip of my tent's zipper as I went inside. Another night it whistled the clink of my metal thermos as I opened the lid. It wasn't just listening to the forest. It was listening to me. It was learning me, every sound, every action. I was no longer an observer. I had become the observed. The peaceful forest had now become an invisible prison, and I knew I wasn't alone in it. The feeling of being watched became constant, a heavy pressure on my shoulders, even during the day. I started to jump at the smallest sounds. After a week of living in fear and confusion, I decided I would leave the next morning. I couldn't take it anymore. I would collect my equipment at dawn and get out of this place. That final night, I sat in my tent, not daring to make a sound. I just wore my headphones and listened. Hours passed in silence. I had almost begun to believe that maybe it had left. And then, the whistling began. But this time, it wasn't mimicking the sounds of the forest or of me. It was whistling a melody, a simple, gentle melody. A melody I recognized instantly, and a horrifying chill ran down my spine. It was a lullaby. The lullaby that my mother, a woman who grew up in this very Appalachian region, used to whistle to me when I was a child. A melody only the two of us knew. A melody I hadn't heard anywhere else in over 20 years. How could it know that tune? Tears began to stream down my cheeks. This was no longer just fear. It was a horrifying violation of the deepest, most private corners of my memory, of my soul. Trembling, I tried to find a logical explanation. Was my memory playing tricks on me? Was it just a common folk tune? In the middle of that thought, I heard a loud and clear crack. A dry branch had just been snapped right outside my tent. It was here. Very close. In a panic, I looked at my recording equipment. I wanted to determine the direction of the sound. I shut off the microphone channel for the west. The whistled lullaby continued. I shut off the north channel. It was still there. In a fit of madness, I shut off all the microphones recording the ambient environment. And the whistling was still there, ringing clear and pure in my headphones. My heart stopped. The whole tent seemed to shrink. I realized with dawning horror. The sound wasn't being picked up from the swamp. It wasn't a physical sound traveling through the air. It was being broadcast directly into my equipment's frequency. The thing didn't just mimic sound. It could manipulate radio waves. It was inside my head, inside my gear directly. I sat speechless, my entire body paralyzed. I had to know what it was. I had to face it. With a courage I didn't know I possessed, I slowly pulled the zipper of my tent. The opening slowly widened, revealing the pitch-black space outside, faintly illuminated by my small lantern. And I saw it. Standing at the edge of the campsite, just outside the lantern's small circle of light, was a tall, gaunt figure. It was taller than a normal man, with unnaturally long and lanky limbs. Its skin was pale white, stretched taut over a disproportionate skeleton. It had no discernible face, just a dark, empty space. It wasn't looking at me. Its head was tilted towards the sky, and from its gaunt chest the sweet melody of my mother's lullaby was emanating, without a mouth, without lips. The sound seemed to just resonate from its body. It suddenly stopped whistling. It slowly turned its faceless head towards me, a jerky movement with the sound of cracking bone. It looked directly at me, and then a new sound came from it through the speaker system in my headphones. This time, It was no longer a whistle. It was a perfect recording of my own voice from that morning when I was testing my equipment. Testing. 1, 2, 3, testing. I don't remember how I screamed. I just remember grabbing my machete and my most important bag, the one with the recordings, and bursting out of the tent and running. I ran for my life through the dark forest, not daring to look back, the sound of my own voice echoing behind me. When dawn came, I finally made it back to the trail. I had abandoned almost all of my expensive equipment. I'm back in the city now, back in a world of chaotic, jumbled noise, but I no longer find peace in silence. Silence now terrifies me. I tried to analyze that last recording. The signal of the whistling and my voice doesn't match any known radio frequency. It's something completely alien. I went into the forest to find the language of nature, but I found something else. Something that listens to us all and learns. It didn't just mimic a bird, it mimicked my memories, my voice. It turned the most familiar things into a horrifying weapon. And my greatest fear is this. After having learned how to speak one day, it will have something to say.